ready for a deep dive. Today, we're tackling World War. And, yeah, I know what you're thinking. Oh, not another history lesson, but hold on.
This isn't about trenches and treaties.
This is about French philosopher Michel Serres.
Right. His book, La Guerre mondiale, literally translates to, well, you guessed it, World War.
But he throws the whole concept for a loop, doesn't he?
Absolutely. Serres wants us to look beyond these traditional battle lines, between countries.
So not just like World War I, World War II, that kind of thing.
Exactly. He's talking about patterns of violence and conflict that have always been with us. So it's like ancient myths.
Okay, so where do we even begin with this? Myths.
Well, he actually starts with this really vivid analogy. A bar fight. Imagine a brawl in a sailor's bar.
Okay, I can picture it. Glasses shattering, all hell breaking loose.
Exactly. He uses this to show how violence, even on a small scale, can escalate crazy fast. But then he throws us a curveball. He asks us to imagine that bar fight, but in reverse.
Rewinding the chaos. Why would we do that?
Because by hitting rewind, we can pinpoint those moments where the violence could have been stopped.
Like a sliding doors moment, where a different choice could have changed everything.
Exactly. Think about Archduke Franz Ferdinand, right? World War I.
Oh, right. If his driver hadn't taken that wrong turn.
That one seemingly small event set off this chain reaction.
That engulfed the world in war. It's mind-blowing when you think about it.
Right. It makes you realize that even the tiniest choices can have massive ripple effects.
It does make you think.
Yeah.
But Serres is interested in more than just individual choices, right?
He's looking at the bigger picture. How do societies try to contain this capacity for violence that we all have?
So how do we do that? Bottle it up.
Well, he argues it's about establishing rules, systems of representation.
Like referees in a boxing match, instead of just letting people brawl it out in the streets.
Exactly. Even in something as primal as a fistfight, we eventually create rules, boundaries. We need that structure.
So civilization is built on this idea, moving from chaos to a system of laws. Is that what you're saying?
Precisely. And he doesn't just pull this out of thin air. He uses history. He uses mythology. He even brings up Noah's Ark.
Wait, what does a flood have to do with international law?
Think about the flood as this metaphor for unchecked violence.
Okay, so it's chaotic, destructive.
Right, it threatens to destroy everything, but then the waters recede. Serres asks, who sent the dove? Who created the rainbow? He's hinting at the emergence of order.
So the receding floodwaters, that could represent what, like the birth of laws, the beginnings of a more organized society.
It's one way to interpret it, and he takes it even further with Greek mythology. The myth of Deucalion and Pyrrha, humanity is reborn from stones after a devastating flood.
He's showing us that these cycles of destruction and renewal are woven into like the very fabric of human existence.
Exactly, and this leads him to one of his most provocative points.
Yeah.
The idea of world war as this conflict between humanity and the planet itself.
And this is where things start to feel really relevant to us today, right? Climate change, resource depletion.
It's not just that we're at war with the environment, though. It's that our relationship with the planet, right now, is a kind of world war.
That's a pretty intense way of looking at it.
It is, and this is where his legal background comes in.
Okay, because Serres wasn't just a philosopher.
Right, he had a really sharp legal mind.
So how does that play into this whole world war idea?
Well, he asks us to imagine this courtroom, right?
But
instead of a trial of, say, a person...
we're putting humanity itself on trial.
Exactly. He imagines animals and plants taking the stand, testifying against all the damage we've done.
Wow. Can you imagine, like, the forest presenting evidence of deforestation, the oceans talking about pollution?
It's a powerful image, isn't it? Makes you think, what if nature had legal rights?
It's a little unsettling when you really think about it.
It is, and that's Serres' point, I think.
So it's not that he literally wants to hire lawyers for Mother Nature.
No, he's using this trial of humanity to expose the flaws in how we think about ethics.
Because we tend to act like humans are the only ones who matter.
Exactly. The natural world is just a resource to exploit in our minds, not something to protect.
It's like we've forgotten that we're part of nature, not separate from it.
And that's where he brings in this whole other concept, the grand fetish.
Okay, I have to admit, that sounds a little ominous.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
He's saying that as we face the consequences of our actions, wildfires, floods, all of that.
We're starting to see the planet as this force to be reckoned with.
Exactly. Almost like those ancient civilizations, right?
Who thought the gods were angry when there was a natural disaster?
Right. And here we are with all our technology, And we're circling back to this primal fear of nature's power.
So, is that a bad thing? Like, is fear holding us back?
That's what's interesting. Serres thinks this fear could actually be a turning point.
Really? You're saying fear can be a good thing?
Sometimes. Think about it. A lot of progress comes from fear, right?
I guess so. Like, we create laws because we're afraid of chaos.
Exactly. So maybe this anxiety about climate change.
It could be the push we need to finally take action.
Yeah. That's the hope, at least. But he also says fear isn't enough on its own.
What else do we need then? Besides a healthy dose of terror about the future.
We need a new way of understanding our place in the world, a new framework.
Okay, so what's the framework? Lay it on me.
He calls it cosmocracy.
Cosmocracy, huh? Sounds fancy. What's that?
Basically, it's recognizing that everything's interconnected, you know?
Okay, that makes sense. But how do we actually put that into practice?
Well, he talks about these concrete universals, and by that he means data.
Data? What, like spreadsheets are going to save us?
Not exactly, but we have so much information now, right? Satellite images, climate models.
Right, we can see the deforestation happening, track pollution in real time.
That's what he means. For the first time, we can see this concrete evidence of how interconnected everything is. And that's powerful.
So we've got all this data, this technology that shows us the big picture.
But are we using it? Are we really taking it to heart? That's the question.
And it's not just about the environment, is it? Serres also talks about terrorism.
Right, and this is where his legal mind really comes into play again.
Because terrorism throws a wrench into everything we've been talking about, doesn't it?
It does. Because it disrupts those systems of order, those rules.
It's like terrorism exists in the gaps where those systems break down.
Exactly. Think about it. Traditional warfare, there are rules, there are boundaries.
Right. Even if those boundaries are often blurred, there's some attempt at, like, a level playing field.
Exactly. But terrorism doesn't play by those rules.
It's chaos. Plain and simple.
And that's exactly what Serres is getting at. Terrorism thrives in chaos. It feeds off of it.
So how do we even begin to address that if it's so unpredictable, so outside the lines?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And Serres doesn't pretend to have all the answers.
But he definitely pushes us to think differently about it.
He does. He says we can't just rely on traditional military solutions.
So we can't just fight fire with fire, so to speak.
Exactly. We have to look deeper.
At the root causes, like what leads people to terrorism in the first place?
Exactly. The poverty, the inequality, the lack of opportunity. These are breeding grounds for resentment and extremism.
So it's not just about fighting terrorists, it's about fighting the conditions that create them.
Precisely. And that brings us back to interconnectedness, doesn't it?
Right, because it's all connected. The environment, terrorism, social justice.
It's all part of the same fabric. We can't address one without addressing the others.
Like this tangled web, and we're all caught in it.
And the way out, Serres seems to be suggesting, is to shift our perspective, to embrace a more holistic view.
So it's not just about saving the planet, it's about saving ourselves.
Exactly. By changing how we interact with the world, with each other, we might actually have a shot at creating a more peaceful future.
It's a tall order, but someone's got to fill it.
And maybe, just maybe, by understanding this broader concept of world war, as Serres presents it,
we can start to imagine what peace might actually look like in the 21st century.
That's the challenge he leaves us with, isn't it? What does peace mean to you?
It's a question worth pondering. Well, that was a wild ride through the mind of Michel Serres.
It certainly was thought-provoking, challenging.
Definitely left me with a lot to think about. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder those big questions.
Until next time, keep asking those tough questions and keep searching for those glimmers of hope.
Because even in a world that often feels like it's falling apart, there's always hope to be found. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.